Hi, this is Dave, and we've got a special program today. We're going to be interviewing Paul, the data coach Gravy. And Paul has got expertise. He's the founder of the Data Group and has got expertise in the use of data. And I'm not going to steal his thunder. So, Paul, well, I'm going to call you Gravy. I guess that's what everybody calls you.
Okay.
So Paul, the data
Yep.
coach Gravy. Yeah. Paul, what about data? First, when you say data, what are you talking about?
Well, I mean, it's a broad subject, isn't it? And it's kind of the future of everything. It's kind of all you hear about in business these days with regard to AI and data. But data is the kind of the foundation of all of our companies are based on data that all of our systems are collecting. All of our mission critical systems are always busy collecting data, which is the truth about everything that's going on in our business. And it's really, if we want to know how our business is doing and we want to know the unbiased 100% truth, the data really tells that story, doesn't it? More so than opinion or biased, our biases and our experiences all kind of shape the way we see things, but the data kind of tells the cold, hard truth about the reality of where our business is, and even more so, where our life is. All of those things. The data tells the true story.
So that I understand. So I'm a primarily sales guy, sales systems guy, and I talk about dashboards and collecting numbers. How many of these, how many of those, and comparing one column of numbers to another to make a quality measurement. Talk about measuring sales and gross profit dollars and penetration of key accounts, all that kind of stuff. Is that what you're talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, those are all KPIs, key performance indicators, especially with regard to sales.
Mm-hmm.
And those are a huge part of data, and visibility into those KPIs is a huge part of using your data effectively. So dashboards at the C-suite and all the way down through sales and
Mm-hmm.
marketing and then operations, all of those KPIs. The numbers are the measurements of how we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
The dates, I always say data is real simple. It's made up of three ingredients: strings, dates, and numbers. So, the strings are the labels and the descriptors. The dates are when and how long, and the numbers are those KPIs you're talking about that really measure how we're doing in each area of the business. So, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
So if you were to sum up, I mean, do you have a summary sort of direction to entrepreneurs and business executives in regards to data? What would you say to them if you could if take 2 minutes to say something about data to that group? What would it be?
Yeah, and this is what I'm trying to talk about in my upcoming book, Data Driven Leaders. Just, I think most leaders, especially if they come from a non-technical background, which most of them do, data can be uh, very intimidating or confusing because that's kind of the lie that has been told, I think, is that this is very complicated. And the truth is, like I said, data is incredibly simple. It's strings, dates, and numbers. So if you're smart enough to run a company or start a company, you're definitely way smarter than you need to be to understand data. And so I always encourage leaders is to really take control of their technology and their data, and always have an eye for, I think the mistake that so many companies and entrepreneurs make as their businesses grow is we just buy systems and tools, especially with the proliferation of SaaS tools. They're so easy to buy. And, oh, this SaaS product, let's sign up for that, this monthly subscription. And so we end up adding all of these different software tools to our business without really any vision for how we're going to capture and use that data that system is capturing. And so what ends up happening is our data is just scattered amongst all these different systems, and we're never really effectively gathering it into one version of the truth data warehouse that we can actually then use to see the truth about our business, to be able to make course corrections, and to be able to use that data effectively through portals, alerts, integrations. There's so many effective ways to use that data. And so what I'm always encouraging leaders to do is be careful when you're buying all these systems and adding all these systems to all these different areas of your business, marketing and operations and finance, that you have a clear plan for capturing all of that data and integrating all of that data into a single version of the Truth Data Warehouse so you can actually see it, have visibility into it, and effectively use it.
So I'm guessing that's, if I were to ask you, what are some of the most common mistakes that people make in regards to data? I'm thinking that would be one, and that is not having a systematic approach to the data and having it bits and pieces all over the place. So I understand that. What would be a couple other common mistakes that entrepreneurs and business executives make in regards to their use of data?
Well, I think philosophically, we invest in what we see value in our personal lives and in our business lives. We're always investing our time, money, energy into things that we see incredible value in. So whatever it is in my business that I'm investing in the most with my time, with my team, with our money is, what I see or perceive in my business as being the most valuable, right? And so what I'm trying to help people understand is the immense value of their data. And if you don't understand or see that immense value in your data, then you're not going to invest in it like you should, right? And so my goal is to help people understand that your data is actually one of, if not the most valuable asset in your business. And therefore you should be investing in it as though it is such a valuable asset. And again, that goes back to making sure we have a strategy to not have that data scattered everywhere, but integrated into a one version of Truth Data Warehouse so we can effectively use it, and investing in making that happen, and then investing in using that data after we have it in a data warehouse. Mm-hmm. So that involves APIs and tools and integrations and portals and alerts and all those things. So I think the key is, to understand and to really value data as such an important asset, because then and only then will you invest in it like you should.
Yeah. When you say invest in it like you should, I'm going to ask you in just a minute what that means exactly. I'm just going to relate personally. I talk a lot about sales systems, and one of the issues is you got to invest in creating the system, and then you have to allocate a certain percentage of gross profit on a monthly basis to maintain the system. And so we've got numbers, we've got benchmarks and stuff like that. Do you have benchmarks and numbers for what do you mean by invest in data? What does that mean exactly? And are there some benchmarks out there to help guide somebody?
Yeah, I mean, to invest in it just means to have a strategy that, hey, we're gonna own our data. We're not gonna leave our data scattered amongst all these different systems. We're going to own it in one single place. I mean, think of if you're trying to sell your company, and a institutional investor is looking at a portfolio of 6 different companies and competitors of yours, and one company really has a handle on all of their data and the other 5 companies don't. I mean, that puts you at a clear, huge competitive advantage. So I think investing in data is just, like I said, knowing the value of it and investing in the value of that by not leaving it just scattered everywhere and getting into that mode that so many businesses do that we all know. It's called spreadsheet hell, where we're always just, exporting data from this system or that system and asking for this report or that report. That's the place we all need to and want to avoid. It's been the reality for the last 20 or 30 years. But the reality now is we finally have the modern cloud-based data warehouse tools available to make, creating a one version of the Truth Data Warehouse really a reality. For so many years, we were trying to do that in all the wrong tools. And I can talk a lot about that, but today we now have Snowflake and Firebolt and all of these great cloud-based data warehouses that really make the possibility of having a one version of truth cloud-based data warehouse a reality, and actually makes it very simple to do and easy to do. And so when I talk about investing in your data, I just mean not leaving it scattered out there in all these different systems and asking IT for this report and that export and that report and living in that spreadsheet hell, but actually saying, hey, we are going to own our data. We are going to set a mission. We're going to have a team dedicated to making sure that our data from all of our different systems is integrated into a one version of the truth data warehouse that's going to become literally one of our company's most valuable assets, if not the most valuable asset. And then we're going to use that data effectively in customer service and customer retention, in operations, in every facet of our company. We're going to use that data warehouse as the one version of the truth. And it's something like you said, you're going to constantly have to maintain it and invest in it. It's never going to be finished because you're always adding new systems. You're always seeing more value in the data, new ways that you can use that data, new KPIs that you can add to your dashboards, new ways that you can use that data in portals to help add efficiencies to customer service or operations. So it's an evolving thing that, yes, you'll always be investing in. Now, what's the benchmark? Is it 20%? Is it 10% of EBITDA? It's different for every company based on how many different systems you have, how big that data warehouse is, how many members you need on that team. But I would say that most companies fail. Most companies have an IT budget and a technology budget, but they fail to specifically have, hey, this is our data budget, and this is a team dedicated to making sure that we always are building and maintaining this one version of the truth data warehouse that will be our company's most valuable asset.
Interesting. So if I've got a business, let's say, let me give you a couple of scenarios. One is under 10 million, and the other is, let's say, 10 to 50 million. So I got a business under $10 million. What does good data management look like? I mean, give me a picture of what it looks like for a business, say, under 10 million annual sales.
Yeah, under 10 million is a great opportunity to kind of lay that foundation because hopefully you're going to get to above 10 million. And if you do it, if you build that data foundation, that data warehouse while you're below that $10 million mark, it's going to be a lot easier because under 10 million, you probably have only a handful of mission critical systems that run your business. When you get up to that, 10, 50 million, you start to the systems start to proliferate and you start to get dozens or multiple dozens of mission critical systems. But, so when you're in that under 10 million, you probably have maybe 5 to 10 at the most mission critical systems. And it's a great time to kind of form that small team to say, hey, we're going to gather all this data. We're going to own all this data. We're going to pull all this data. Usually every night is enough for most systems. We're going to pull this data into our data warehouse every night. Some systems you need operationally, you might need, at a faster cadence than that real time throughout the day. But most systems, if you load the data every night, you're getting most of what you need to build that data warehouse. So I think that's a great time where you're a small business just to focus on, hey, we're going to understand the value of our data. We're going to own it. We're going to invest in it. And you're laying that foundation as the company grows, that each new system as your company grows, you've already got this mentality that, hey, we're going to add this system, but we have a plan and a path to capture all that data that system is capturing and pull it into our one version of the truth data warehouse because we've been doing that with all of our systems. And so you just build on that. As you said, if you get above 10 million, it gets more complicated just because you got more systems. You're going to need a bigger team. You're going to need to invest more in making that happen.
Interesting. We think a lot alike because my world is sales systems, but I talk about a sales review team that meets once a month and reviews the numbers, and the dashboard. And I think we're talking the same language. Yeah. Great. Well,
yeah, sales dashboard is great and helpful for the team and the C-suite to know how the sales are going, marketing's going, all those numbers.
Yeah, all those numbers, yeah. And, an issue with the salesperson is we have a formula that we use to measure the productivity of a salesperson, which is sales productivity happens to be a phrase that's relatively unheard of in the world of business, but they can be measured and so on. So we talk about, 10 or 12 measurements every month and a team that reviews those and so on. So I think we're in the same ballpark. So how many measurements, how many numbers should a CEO and the team look at each month or each week or whatever the time period is?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and there is that old phrase, paralysis by analysis. If you get too many numbers, it can just create confusion. Every position, what I talk about in my book, Data Driven Leader, is, so many people are focused, and you're focused on the dashboard for the sales team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many people are focused on the dashboard for the C-suite.
Mm-hmm.
And that's critically important. I mean, the C-suite obviously needs visibility into those KPIs so they can make course corrections at the highest levels of the business. But what I talk about is if you can have that visibility into those critical KPIs at every level of the organization, then, now you have your lower level managers making better decisions, making course corrections, and that trickles all the way to the top. So now C-suite has less, important decisions they need to make or emergency sort of decisions because better decisions are being made at the lower levels. So I think using data in those KPIs at every level and keeping it to, a number, whether it's 6, whether it's 12, there's a manageable number of important KPIs that are really mission critical to each level and each manager at each level of the business. So if you get too many, it gets too crazy. But I think if you focus on, hey, at each level of the company, what are the 6 to 12 critical KPIs? It's very different for the manager of the manufacturing floor than it is for the finance, than it is for the C-suite. But you can identify those 6 to 12 KPIs that are important at every level. And again, if you have them at every level, it makes it a lot easier on the C-suite because we're making better decisions at the lower level. And now the C-suite, the problem is we spend so much time in management in the C-suite putting out fires. And the result of fires is because we have poor data at the lower levels. And so what's happening is those emergencies are bubbling up all the way to the C-suite because they haven't been taken care of at the lower levels. If we had visibility into those numbers at the lower levels and those course corrections and decisions could have been made at the lower levels, we prevent those fires from coming up to the C-suite. So I think having those KPIs, a small number of the very important KPIs, all the way down through every level of management is the key. Not too many, but enough and the right numbers that prevent those big fires. And that's the way I say, look at the fires that you have coming into your office as the C-suite, as the big leader at whatever level, and focus on those and say, from a data perspective, what numbers, what data could we have captured that would have told us ahead of time that this fire was coming? Start to capture those numbers and build a KPI out of that or build an alert out of that so that you're alerted ahead of time. You can solve those fires before they come. If you have the same fire come 2 or 3 times, then that should be a light bulb go off in your head that, hey, we need some data to prevent that fire a 4th time and a 5th time and a 6th time. And so that's how you create efficiency and smoothness in your business is by using data to stop those fires before they start and stop them at the lowest levels is the critical piece, is get those KPIs, get those numbers at the levels where they need to be to stop those fires while they're small. Yeah.
So if I were to ask you, how would you go about starting to, let's say you're data ignorant, you just don't know what you don't know, but now you're convinced I'd do a better job of managing and reviewing and collecting data. And so if I were to ask you, how would you start? I think you've already answered that in a sense. Look at the fires that come to you and work there first. What would be the next step? What are a couple things that somebody can do who wants to do a better job of managing data?
Yeah, and it goes back to a little bit what I touched on before is that, the first concept of the data warehouse, of aggregating all of our data into a single data warehouse from all of our systems, was invented back in the 80s. But again, we had the wrong tools for the job. And it wasn't until about 2015 with the advent of cloud computing and AWS and Snowflake really being now the modern leader in true cloud-based data warehouse. I love Snowflake. We're a Snowflake partner, and they have a great product. And so what I tell everybody is, back in the day as I was working in data 10, 15, 20 years ago, when we wanted to build a data warehouse, we'd spend an incredible amount of time in conference rooms whiteboarding all of these different data models and things that we were going to try to build. And the reason we had to do that was because we were using the wrong tools for the job. We didn't have these cloud-based data warehouses like Snowflake. So because we had the wrong tools, we had to do all this planning ahead of time to try to build this data warehouse in this wrong tool. But what I encourage people now is to say, look, we have these incredible modern data warehouses like Snowflake, and they're so easy to not only load data into, but then to manipulate, change the data model, copy the data, move the data, enrich the data. So what I tell everybody is don't do what we used to do, which is like, hey, let's all get in a conference room and whiteboard and let's plan this and let's create a vision and a holistic data strategy. Like, don't do that because it's just not necessary and it wastes a lot of time and it wastes a lot of ROI and it can frustrate the leaders because you don't see any return on investment. So I tell everybody today is, look, get your Snowflake subscription and start loading data. Just, the mission critical systems you have in your company, they're very easy to identify. Every department head in your company knows what 1, 2, or 3 systems have all of their data. Identify those systems and don't strategize, don't whiteboard, don't draw boxes. Just connect to those systems and start loading the data into Snowflake. Now you have your data in one place. Now you can see it. Now you can start to say, all right, what data are we missing? What data is garbage and needs to be cleaned? How do we fix that? Do we need to fix that at the source system? Can we fix that data while we load it into Snowflake? So you start to get a real picture if you just start. It's like, how do you get back in shape? I mean, you got to show up to the gym that first time, right? So rather than talking about, just start loading data, and then you get the visibility that starts to create meaningful conversations and meetings, and then it will just start to grow because you'll see it, you'll see the value of it, and you'll start to see the pieces that are missing. You start to capture those pieces, and then there's tons of great tools out there for visualization. I think Sigma Computing is another kind of game changer like Snowflake. Sigma Computing has a great tool for data visualization, analytics, and KPIs. It works directly on top of Snowflake in today's modern data warehouses like Redshift and Google BigQuery and Firebolt, so that you don't have to load the data out of the warehouse into a BI tool. Sigma Computing sits right on top of your data warehouses, and it has great data visibility to it. So if you can get a tool like Snowflake and Sigma Computing and add those to, your data strategy, you'll be just way ahead of the competition. Just start loading your data, get that visibility of it, and you'll be off and running because you'll really be able to start seeing your data, see the value of it, see what additional data you need, start building those KPIs, and it'll just, the momentum as you just start loading data and seeing it, it'll just grow, and you'll see, where you're headed with this. So don't strategize. Just, the systems that have your data, start loading that data into a warehouse.
Got it. Yeah. Good stuff. Well, if somebody wants to meet you or talk with you, how would they do that?
Our website, thedatagroup.cloud. My email is my last name. Everybody's called me Graeve since kindergarten. It's spelled a little different, Graeve, at thedatagroup.cloud. Email me or look at our website, reach out to us.
Okay. And so, Graeve, you also have a Christian message. Christ's been a part of your life. So, in just a couple of minutes, can you give us a view of how does that work for you? What does that mean and how does it work for you?
Yeah, it works wonderfully for me. It's transformed my whole life. My parents were definitely very Christian parents and tried to raise me that way, but I guess like a lot of kids, it didn't really take hold through my younger years and through college and all that. But Later in life, it started to take on more meaning. And I guess finally, I was a little late to the game, later than I would like to admit, but in my mid 40s, I finally really went all in with Jesus and just really transformed my life. Got very involved in my local church, and my local church, after a few years of being very involved on the team, asked me, what was dramatically different about my life, and I said my phone, and they said that's an interesting answer. Well, why is you say your phone? And I said, well, because if you look at my phone and the friends that I used to have and the messages that I used to be sending to and from my friends is radically different from my phone today. And all of my friends are now people that are in the church or pastors that are in the church, and the messages that I'm sending to and from them are radically different. And it just completely transformed my life in every way. And so my pastor, one thing he says is that I think is so huge, and it kind of goes back to data. He talks about, what you focus on grows and what you starve shrinks. And so it's all about changing kind of the focus of your mind from the worldly things and those things that I used to be focused on to the eternal things and to Jesus and to the church and then to family and all those things that are really in alignment with, the way God created us to be and his design for, family and church and community with him and relationship with him, relationship with each other. So when your focus is on him, then it just kind of trickles down. Your focus is on Jesus and eternity, and your focus is on the church, then your focus is on the family, and you're not focused on all those other things anymore. And that changes and transforms your mind just the way, any data would. If you change the data inputs in your business, it transforms your business. You change the data inputs in your mind, it transforms your mind.
Yeah. Well, good stuff. Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Enjoyed it.
Okay, that's it. We're done. Bye-bye.